Building cars is a tricky, complex business, and sometimes car manufacturers make mistakes. I'm not just talking about products that reach markets such as the AMC Pacer and the Austin Allegro, two absolute stinkers if you ask me. I'm talking about the bigger, wider corporate decisions which have massive ramifications, some of which we still feel the effects of today, some of which have even changed the course of human history. Yes, this video is all about when car manufacturers f**k up.
Buying a new car? Then head to CarWow and my team will help you find your next car at a fair price. CarWow, your one-stop car buying comparison site.
The first cock up is something called Fordlandia. Now, back in the 1920s, Ford was getting a little bit fed up with having to pay high prices for the rubber for the tyres fitted to its cars. You see, the British government had a monopoly on rubber supply. So Ford thought, how can I get around that? I know, why don't I make my own rubber? All I need to do is get some rubber trees and harvest them. So Ford decided to clear a big area of Brazilian rainforest and grow rubber trees there. But you can't just grow rubber trees, you need a workforce to actually harvest them. So Ford decided that, well, what I could do is employ the local people. But obviously we need them nearby because it's in the middle of the rainforest. So I need to build a town for them to live in so they can work. It all seems quite simple. So Ford went about building this town. So it had things like prefabricated houses, it had a sawmill to actually produce the wood required for construction of the town. It had other features such as a hospital, a school, a church. There's also a library, a golf course. All well and good. Very nice for the local workforce, right? However, there were some rules. Ford decreed that there could be no alcohol on the site at all. Remember, this was during American Prohibition. However, Ford went a little bit too far in stopping the fun. You see, Ford banned women from the town. It also banned the playing of football. So the workforce weren't happy about that. They also weren't particularly happy about having to live in American-style prefab houses. And they didn't much like the American food. I say American, I mean North American or United States of American food. Does that even make sense? I don't know. Anyhow, that wasn't the only problem. You see, the workforce tended to get sick from tropical diseases because they're living in the middle of the rainforest. But the biggest problem was the fact that the rubber trees also got sick. Ford didn't really know about growing rubber trees and they were planted too close together. And because they were so close together, disease could spread from one rubber tree to the other quite easily. And so the trees got sick, the workforce got sick and extremely pissed off. In fact, they got so annoyed that they decided to revolt. They ran amok through the town, chopping down telegraph poles, vandalising things. They even chased off Ford's managers. In fact, Ford had to call in the Brazilian army for help to restore the peace, but they never really did. And in the end, Ford just thought, sod it. We've had enough of this. And in 1934, they closed the whole project down. They sold the land back to the Brazilian government at a loss in today's money of $300 million. To make matters even worse, the project was totally pointless anyway. You see, by 1944, synthetic rubber was invented, and so there was no need for all those rubber trees anyway. The second car manufacturer f**k-up is leaded petrol. Now, back in the 1920s, there was a problem with engines because they would knock. Now, knocking is where the fuel-air mixture pre-ignites because of the heat of the engine, and it can cause an engine to just explode. Not good. However, some scientists at General Motors found that by adding lead to the engine, they could stop this pre-ignition or knocking. Now, they didn't just chuck lumps of lead in the engine. Instead, they came up with a compound called tetraethyl lead. It's a liquid that you just add to the fuel and it stops that pre-ignition. All well and good. Although scientists at the time did warn that, do you know what, this might result in lots of lead in the atmosphere and lead isn't particularly good for you. Could be problematic in the future. And those scientists turned out to be right. However, this wasn't actually known for quite some time. You see, the lead industry was busy lobbying governments to just go, yeah, put lead into petrol, because obviously the lead industry stood to make shed loads of cash out of all the lead going into all that fuel. But in the 1970s, there's found to be a correlation between increased lead in the atmosphere and reduced performance for children at school. Despite this though, it took the United States of America until 1996 until they banned leaded petrol. Well, still, it took us here in the United Kingdom until the year 2000 to ban leaded petrol. Since the banning of lead though, the United Nations have calculated that 1.2 million premature deaths have been avoided. That's not all though. There's a theory that the reduction in lead in the atmosphere has resulted in a falling of violent crime rates. Basically, lead makes you more aggressive. The next cock-up is due to the fact that some manufacturers relied solely on one manufacturer for the production of their airbags. Now, back in 2014, a Japanese company called Takata, they were providing airbags for 20% of all cars sold, and they were working with 20 different car manufacturers. Good for them, eh? However, not really. You see, 14 years earlier, at the turn of the millennium, Takata made the very stupid choice of changing their airbag propellant to something called ammonium nitrate. Now, ammonium nitrate is very explosive. That's what you want in an airbag. It needs to go bang. However, you want it to go bang in a very controlled manner. Ammonium nitrate has a bit of a problem, and that's that it's susceptible to moisture and heat. As a result, certain airbags went off willy-nilly, even without an accident, while others went off with a little bit too much of a bang. As a result, they're pretty much like little claymore mines, like sending shrapnel into the driver's face and neck. Not great. Deaths have actually been attributed to these airbags going off incorrectly. As a result, there's been a whole recall program about these airbags because they were fitted to 60 million vehicles. Unfortunately, some of these vehicles are still on the road. Reason being that some people haven't bought their cars in for recall work and others just haven't got the message. I'll tell you who did get the message though, Takata. They went bust, obviously. The most famous car manufacturer f***up of recent times is of course the Volkswagen Dieselgate. Now, we're all pretty much aware of this. Large recap. Back in 2014, regulators in California noticed a bit of a difference between the claimed emissions of certain VW Group diesel cars compared to what they actually got in reality. And further studies revealed that the cars will produce different results if you were testing them out on the road compared to in a laboratory. Finally, in 2015, Volkswagen put its hands up and said, do you know what? We've been lying, guys, we're sorry. We have this special cheat device. What this meant was that the car could tell if you're in a lab doing testing like they do when they're actually working out the emissions for a car compared to when you're driving on the road. As a result, some of these cars were emitting between 5 and 35 times as many pollutants as was originally claimed. Now, the Volkswagen Group isn't the only car company which has been implicated with fitting such cheat devices, but it is the most famous one, and it's been very costly. When you add up all the fines, the buybacks, and the fixes and compensation Volkswagen has had to pay out regarding Dieselgate, it comes to over $30 billion. Now, that's what I call a f***up. Tesla is the most valuable car company in the world. Its market capitalization is an incredible $1 trillion. Now, to put that into perspective, Toyota, which is the second most valuable car company, it's worth $300 billion. What a massive difference. Now, Tesla actually launched its first car in 2012, the Model S. Obviously, Elon was a bit of a visionary and he saw the future of electric cars, and that's why Tesla is so valuable today. However, Elon didn't beat General Motors to being able to see the true value of electric cars. It launched something called the EV1 back in 1996, and by all accounts it was a very good car. People who bought it loved it. It could easily have been the future and seen GM worth as much as Tesla, or maybe even more today. However, it wasn't to be. You see, bosses at GM thought, oh, do you know what, yeah, we made this car and people love it, but electric cars, they're a little bit niche, there's no future in them. Let's not make any more. In fact, let's go further than that. Let's actually buy back all the cars we've sold and crush them and pretend this whole saga never existed. Now, all the conspiracy theorists amongst you might want to just put something in the comments about what you think really happened at GM and why they withdrew this car. But either way, that decision not to progress with electric cars and be a pioneer has cost GM dearly. The next fuck-up also involves GM and its handling of the Swedish car brand Saab. Now, Saab was quite a unique car manufacturer. It just did things a little bit differently. It had its own little market and it was fairly successful. However, in 1989, GM bought 50% of Saab and it thought, do you know what? we can actually use Saab to go up against the likes of BMW, Audi and Mercedes. It's got a cool European image, it's got a very quirky styling and a niche following. All we have to do is just increase output and that appeal will just spread. Trouble is, GM's stewardship of Saab actually ruined what was good about it. You see, what they tried to do was use their current cars and platforms for the Saab vehicles, and so they lost their uniqueness. For instance, a Saab 9.3 was effectively a Vauxhall Vectra, just in a slightly different body, but it was a lot more expensive. Now, GM actually took full ownership of Saab by the year 2000, and it continued with this approach. However, it was underfunding the company, and as a result, it just didn't have the products to go up against the mighty Germans. People stopped buying them, and then eventually by 2011, they stopped selling cars. Now, that is just a small taste of times when car manufacturers have cocked up. There are many other cases. If you know of any that you find funny, please let me know what they are in the comments below, and so other people watching this can see them as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. If you want to click on those windows there, you can watch some more videos, and if you click on that box there, you can sell your car through carwow.